Good morning. From time to time, we have asked distinguished alumni to address the student body so that they could share their experiences in various fields of endeavor and to bring to mind the lessons that they have learned over the course of their transition from being Chaminade student to accomplished members of society. This morning we are privileged to have with us Captain Michael Malone, United States Navy, Chaminade alumnus of the class of 1966. Captain Malone is the commanding officer of the United States aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise. After graduating from Chaminade, Captain Malone attended the United States Naval Academy. That was the beginning of a very distinguished career as a naval officer. Over the years, he served as a naval aviator, a flight instructor, executive officer, and the commanding officer. He's logged over 3,000 flight hours and 800 carrier landings, and has flown combat missions in Vietnam, Lebanon, and Libya. Currently, he commands over 5,000 persons on the Enterprise, which is one of the United States' 12 floating cities in our fleet. Captain Malone and his wife Janet, who is also with us today, have raised 4 children, and it is my pleasure now to introduce Captain Michael Malone.
Good morning. It's truly a privilege to be here. Often when I'm introduced as the commanding officer of Enterprise, people are disappointed when Captain Kirk doesn't step out, and so for that I apologize. Although my daughters say that they think I look a lot more like Jean-Luc Picard. It truly is a privilege to come back to Chaminade, and so thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I will speak a bit about aircraft carriers, about one aircraft carrier in particular. I'll talk a little bit about decisions that I know you are facing here at Chaminade, and just a bit about the value of the Chaminade education as you approach those decisions. We on board Enterprise have recently returned from a 6-month deployment to the Mediterranean and the Arabian Gulf. Much of what I say about Enterprise will be stories of people, the people that make Enterprise sail, the people that steam Enterprise and make her airplanes fly. Next slide. Before we talk about Enterprise in particular, why do we have aircraft carriers in the United States? In the past 50 years, since the end of World War II, there have been 220-some occasions in which the United States has decided to use some display of force, and hopefully a display that will lead only into deterrence rather than fighting. Of those 220-some times, the Navy has been called on more than 90% of the time, and aircraft carriers 2/3 of those times. So we truly are the President's 911 force. When something seems to be amiss somewhere, one of the first questions I asked is, where are the carriers, which one is closest, and how quickly can it get there? We have 12 aircraft carriers, 6 in the Pacific Fleet, 6 in the Atlantic Fleet. Those in the Atlantic Fleet spend the majority of their time in the Mediterranean and some time in the Arabian Gulf. Those on the West Coast spend the majority of their time in the Pacific, and again, some time in the Arabian Gulf. Regardless of where the ships are, they're manned by young men and women whose average age is 19. The average age of the crew of Enterprise, 5,400 people, is 19 and a half years old. Our ships are always deployed. In fact, on any given day, 1/3 of the Navy is forward deployed, and more than 50% of the Navy is at sea. When we began with Enterprise and this deployment, we knew that there'd be a story to tell at the end. And we looked for a cute series of buzzwords or a theme And after a great search, we found that Webster's dictionary was probably the best value of all. This is the definition of enterprise. We decided we didn't need the catchy phrase. This is who we are, this is what we did, and this is how we did it. This is the voyage of United States ship Enterprise. This was about a 6-year mission. We began in October of 1990 by having to put Enterprise into a shipyard for what would be about a 5-year period. It was the biggest overhaul in Navy history. We would refuel all 8 of Enterprise's nuclear reactors, and the bill would be $2.1 billion. This is a picture of the ship as she was towed into the shipyard in October of 1990. She spent 4 years in this dock, 2 of those years in dry dock. Some young enlisted men would spend their entire 4-year enlistment in this shipyard. In September of '94, she was towed out and began her sea trials. After 4 months out of the shipyard, she was back in for another 6 months for warranty work and some final repairs, and then finally turned loose from the shipyard. And again, the cost was about half of that of a brand new aircraft carrier. But now here's a picture of Enterprise. This is Enterprise. The 19 and 20-year-olds, the people who make the ship steam and make the airplanes fly. It's not unusual to have a crew of people that young. It was unusual to have a ship that was 35 years old and had not forward deployed in over 6 years. Adding to the complexity of our deployment task, the end of our 6-year mission, was new technology. The ship had been in the yards for nearly 6 years, and technology had moved on. We had an enormous amount of technology added to the ship in the last few days, which added to the incredible task that the young people have. Deployment's a great undertaking for families as well. On Enterprise, when we talk of team, the family is the heart of the team. It's hard to leave, but it's even harder to stay behind for the families who must remain behind, for spouses who must take care of children and home and car, for spouses who must wonder and worry about how much the sailor is going to change over the next 6 months. But for us, the 28th of June came, and just as exams come at the end of the semester, deployment comes at the end of workups. And so at 11:55 on the 28th of June, we ordered all lines to be taken in, and at noon we were underway for the first deployment in over 6 years for Enterprise. It was a proud day. We were now part of the Atlantic Fleet again, and we were taking the first giant step in our undertaking of great scope. I'm going to pause for a minute right here and right now to let you see a little bit about the sailors, a little bit of video. You got to have a video. piece of our definition of enterprise is that we are a business organization. Our business is power projection and forward presence, and we do it better than any other instrument of diplomacy in the United States inventory. When 92,000 tons of aircraft carrier sails into the neighborhood, it's an awesome presence. But we would be nothing at all without our airplanes. We carry 74 airplanes, 50 of which are strike capable. Strike capable means that those airplanes can go attack targets if ordered to. It's our commitment in the Navy that an aircraft carrier comes with 70-some airplanes, but always 50 strike airplanes. And now let me introduce you to a few of the airplanes, some of the ones you saw flying just a minute ago in the video. The F-18 Hornet, it's our Fleet Air Defense precision strike airplane. It can pick out targets ashore and destroy them. I had the privilege a few years ago of commanding one of these squadrons, and I will tell you that it is the finest fighter airplane in the world. Right now we're testing new F-18s, an F-18-2000, if you will, for the next century of airplanes that will be flown on and off the aircraft carriers. One of our other fighters is the F-14 Tomcat. Those of you that have seen Top Gun, I'm sure, have seen the F-14. It was built and designed, it was designed and built as an interceptor to protect the fleet, but because of today's new requirements, it also is a precision munitions delivery airplane. On board Enterprise, we had a squadron of A-6s. This airplane has been around since the early 1960s. Unfortunately, this was the last deployment for the A-6 Intruder, the last flight of the Intruder, if you will, when it left Enterprise at the end of our deployment. These airplanes will be replaced by the new F-18s that I mentioned a moment ago that we're designing to fight tomorrow's fight. This was one of our most valuable players, the COD, stands for Carrier On Board Delivery. Brought people, brought parts, and most importantly, it brought mail from home. Next slide. I've shown you some of the airplanes. We also sail with cruisers and destroyers to help protect the aircraft carrier. This is a picture of one of our NATO Sea Sparrow missiles being fired. It's one of our last lines of self-defense. This was a practice firing. We knocked an inbound target down with it, and then shortly afterwards we were attacked, if you will, by another simulated target that we were able to shoot down with our CWIS system. It's a Gatling gun system that fires 4,000 rounds a minute. If any of you are any good at picking out airplanes, you'll notice that there are two different kinds of airplanes here. The three in the back, or the three on the left side, are F-18 Hornets. The ones on the right-hand side are Russian-built MiG-29 Fulcrums. The Germans have some of those Russian-built airplanes, and we had an opportunity on our deployment for our fighter pilots to go fly with and against the Russian-built MiG-29s. It was a wonderful opportunity. Of course, the fighter pilots came back saying they had no problems at all with them. But then since I've been a fighter pilot, I know that meant that they probably were in a pretty good fight. One of the other things that we do as part of our power projection and display of forward presence is to work with other countries. This is a picture of a United Kingdom aircraft carrier, a little bit smaller than ours. They're making a sharp turn and they're showing off, and fortunately none of the airplanes rolled off their deck. When we deployed and went into the Mediterranean, we expected to spend about 3.5 months there. We knew we'd hit several nice ports in the Mediterranean, and it was to be a fairly pleasant summer cruise in the Mediterranean. On September 12th, we were off the coast of Bosnia to support the United Nations forces in elections that were going to occur on the 14th of September. That night, while we were flying and things seemed peaceful, we got a call and were told to make our very best speed to the Arabian Gulf. Things were heating up in the Middle East again. Things in northern Iraq were not settled, and in fact we had used some of our Tomahawk missiles to attack targets in Iraq. Enterprise was called and told to get there as fast as possible. We were called because land-based air in Turkey was not permitted to fly, and land-based air in Saudi Arabia was not permitted to fly, United States land-based air. And the United States was not permitted to overfly Turkey or overfly Syria. So the only way to get to Iraq was to send aircraft carriers. Enterprise was sent on this 4,300-mile trip, and we covered it in record time. After we exited the Suez Canal, we did 31 knots from Suez to the Straits of Hormuz. 3 hours after going through the Straits of Hormuz, we were launching airplanes into the skies over Iraq. We were ready on arrival. That's what our carrier force is about. Our air wing alone outnumbered the land-based air, the United States land-based air that was in Saudi Arabia. That's the power of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. We're sovereign. We do not need permission to deploy from other countries. All we need is the permission of the President to operate. When we arrived in the Gulf and joined the Carl Vinson Battle Group, we were the epitome of mobile power projection at sea. We were fully autonomous. We brought our own self-sustaining airfield, and again, the only permission we needed was that of the President to fly. Sending aircraft carrier battle groups to a place in the world sends a convincing message, a message that just words may not send. It may be a coincidence, but shortly after we arrived in the Arabian Gulf, the Iraqi aggression in the north ceased. Power projection. One of the important parts of power projection and forward presence is entertaining visitors. We entertained more than 9,000 visitors during our deployment. This was just one of them, the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu. His question when he sat on the bridge and watched us launch and recover airplanes was, what would it cost for him to buy one of these? He very much wanted one. He also wanted to know if any of the other countries in the Middle East had them, and we were pleased to tell him that no, they did not. Join the Navy and see the world, and that we did on our deployment. We visited Palma, Spain, Cannes, France, Ceuta Bay, Crete, Haifa, Israel, Rhodes, Greece, Naples, Italy, Manama, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. But when we visit these places, our sailors do more than just leave money behind, and we do that several hundred thousands of dollars each time we visit a port. But our sailors give their effort and their time. Our sailors are the best ambassadors that the United States have. You see a picture here of some of our sailors working on a school in Palma, Spain. We also spent some time working or doing some landscaping work at a home for the elderly in Cannes, France. And in Israel, we had an opportunity to help refurbish an orphanage and then bring a big handful of the young children out to see Enterprise. A systematic and industrious activity. Enterprise is a city that never sleeps. We have the equivalent of 7 restaurants, 4 department stores, 2 health clubs, an airport, a TV station, a fire department, a police department, a weather station, a hospital, a dental office, and 8 nuclear reactors capable of powering Minneapolis, Minnesota. I truly wish I could round up this group and take you all to Enterprise for a tour, but I can't. So one of the things we will do now is take a bit of a tour via the slides. The flight deck of Enterprise is 4.5 acres of steel. There are 4 steam catapults, 4 arresting gear engines, and always 45 to 50 airplanes on the flight deck. Airplanes coming and going at 150 miles an hour. It is the most dangerous work environment on Earth, and is manned by young men and women 19.5 years old. They're the folks that make it work. On a typical day, we'll fly 90 to 100 flights, or sorties as they're called, over a 12-hour period. That means that these young people have to be on the flight deck 2 hours before and 2 hours after to help set up for the next day. So this young team of 19-year-olds works a 16-hour day every day. We fly nearly every day when we're at sea, and it's these young people that make it work. They also work down in the hangar bay. You can see a young man and woman working on a jet engine down in our hangar bay. It's the folks in the hangar bay that get the airplanes up and ready to fly for the next day, and there is little that sailors won't do, including staying up all night long, to see to it that that airplane makes it to the flight deck for the next day. If you're from a big family, think about serving 12,000 meals a day. We serve food on board Enterprise about 20 hours a day, including something we call mid-rats, which is a meal that begins in the middle of the night for folks whose day begins in the middle of the night. We work very hard to provide good food for the sailors, and You may recognize the man in the glasses. This was some of our high-priced help for Thanksgiving when we were anchored in Naples Bay. That's General Shalikashvili, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, slapping turkey on the trays in the mess line. We have a chapel on board, and we have a flight deck which doubles as a huge chapel when we need it. We take 3 chaplains with us, 3 chaplains that are assigned to Protestant, 1 Catholic. And for special holidays, we even have a rabbi that comes aboard. We had a rabbi aboard to help us celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We use helicopters to transport our chaplains around the battle group so that each of the smaller ships who don't have chaplains can have religious services. I told you that we're a business organization and a great activity, a systematic activity. On board, we have a dispersing office that administers a $6 million payroll every 2 weeks. We have an education office that provides college courses and college credit. Most of our sailors are high school graduates, but for the few that are not, we also provide high school courses so that folks can work towards their diploma. We have a supply department that manages the spare parts and things we need to keep this $8 billion asset afloat. We have a library where folks can watch movies, read books, a legal office that provides electronic tax assistance, and I guess with 1 day to go, hopefully everybody that needs to file has done so. And we have a complete dental and medical department. In fact, we conducted over 50 surgeries while we were on deployment. I told you about cooking for a large family. We also have to shop for a large family. We have to get fuel, we have to get food and ammunition. One of the things we can do is give fuel. And in this next picture you see, or both of those pictures, you see us providing fuel to one of our escort ships. The seas were a little rough that day. You can just barely see the hose. There's a hose going across. We provide jet fuel to the ships. We don't use fuel for our engines because we're nuclear powered, but our jet fuel can be run in the ship's engines as well. So here's a picture of us pumping gas to USS Mitchell while Mother Nature did the windshield. We also take fuel at sea. We take fuel and provisions. About every 5 days we go alongside. Think in terms of you pulling into a gas station each time the gauge reads 3/4. We never let our fuel get below 70%. We never know when the president is going to call, and so we don't want to have to slow down or stop for fuel. So we keep our tanks very full. And we do it at sea at 15 knots, headed in the direction of our choice. So we're very mobile and very flexible. There's a picture here of us receiving a jet engine, a spare engine from our supply ship. We also do it via helicopter. Helicopters move food and ammunition for us while we're alongside the supply ship. Again, it allows us to continue along at 15 knots, moving in the direction we choose to. Initiative. At the heart of enterprise lies a group of young people who believe they can do anything. On our deployment, we had several firsts. Next slide, please. When our boss said that no ship had ever been permitted to go pierside, no nuclear-powered aircraft carrier had ever been permitted to go pierside in the Mediterranean, and asked us if we thought we could do it at this one particular place in Ceuta Bay, Crete, the answer was, of course we could. The young sailors figured out how we could get in and out of that narrow channel and take the ship to the pier. There was no great benefit for them. There was no liberty that day in Ceuta Bay, Crete. We had a picnic on the pier, sort of almost like a family picnic. We played softball and volleyball. Folks ran in circles around with a great number of joggers, and we accomplished that so that other aircraft carriers, other nuclear-powered aircraft carriers may someday go pierside. In addition, we were the first aircraft carrier to visit the island state of Bahrain in the Middle East. Our navigator and our quartermasters figured out how to get down that narrow channel and provided a wonderful liberty opportunity for the sailors, the opportunity to see a Middle Eastern country. It was our only opportunity, but it was an absolutely superb effort. Another of the things that our sailors do is fix things that break. One particular engine repair that our sailors did that we were told we could not do, conventional wisdom said that it had to be done in a shipyard, it had to be done with the ship stable at a pier. We decided we could do it underway while we were in the Arabian Sea, and we did so, and we saved the government $750,000 in doing so. One of the pieces of technology that we have is a satellite TV system. There are many things that we do with it. We send imagery. The system exists to send pictures, to send imagery of targets that our pilots might need in their planning. One of the things we found that we could do with it was bring young families together for the first time. While we were on deployment, 170 new family members were born to the Enterprise family. One of our young sailors decided that we could bring mom and baby to a station in Norfolk and then bring the dads to our TV station. And so for some very fortunate and happy people, they met their new family member at sea over our satellite TV system. We spent a great deal of time trying to keep in touch with the families at home. When we left Norfolk, we were committed to doing that, and we were fortunate in having a local newspaper that was also committed. A local newspaper printed this map tracker for us, and 3 times a week the newspaper would print our updated position so that families at home could keep track of where we were. Our sailors also became authors. Our sailors had the opportunity to write articles. Each week the newspaper carried a 750 to 800 word article that had been written by one of our sailors. Initiative, that was the piece that I was talking about. On Enterprise, you've got to have initiative. And we'll talk in just a minute about initiative and how that might be a useful thing for you folks as well. I am very, very proud to be part of Enterprise. I'm very proud of the sailors and all they have done. This is your ship as well. It's something that you are investing in as taxpayers and something that you will continue to invest in. And I'm pleased to tell you that things are going very, very well on board Enterprise. I've got one more piece of video that we're going to show you right now. A few years ago, we had some encroachment arguments at an air station about noise, jet noise. And one of the bumper stickers that came out of that encroachment argument was that jet noise is the sound of freedom. We're going to let Neil Diamond give us just a little bit of his own beautiful noise.
Just like a into my room, and it's begging for me just to give it a tune.
I said initiative was important. Onboard Enterprise initiative is vital to everybody. Initiative is vital to you here at Chaminade. Young people are faced with tough decisions, and one of those decisions is a career choice. A lot of you are facing that. A lot of you are facing college decisions. I would suggest that if you keep your options open, if you do things to keep as many of your options open for as long as possible, you go a long way towards helping yourself with this decision. If you can, study technical things. Our systems in the Navy are very technical. Systems out there in the world are there's an incredible shortage of computer software engineers these days. If you can, study technical. If you can't, then whatever you choose, study well. The grade point average, whether you like to hear it or not, is the single best measurement of demonstrated ability in young students. People that are looking at you're looking at your records for college, people that will look at your college records for employment, they will look at your grade point average. For me, at age 42, I sat across the desk from a four-star admiral who was interviewing me to get into the nuclear power program, and he had my college transcript in his hand, and I was embarrassed. So study well. As you approach your career choices, remember that the choice that you make as you begin a career is not a choice that has to be for life. For example, if you choose the military, it can be something for 4 to 6 years. It's a great way to start, the Army used to say. Regardless of what career choice you make, it's not a decision that you should dread. It's a decision that you should look forward to. It's a decision that you should gain information about and then make the decision fun. It's absolutely important that you enjoy the decision and that you enjoy the time as you approach these decisions, and you enjoy your high school years and enjoy your college years. And so I would tell you that if you're not having fun, you ain't doing it right. So enjoy yourself. You have made one of the best first choices because of where you sit. The choice to come to Chaminade, the choice to stay at Chaminade. I know that the first year is difficult. I know that years after that get tougher, although I suppose the freshmen shouldn't hear that. But you have made the first best decision of your life. Before I was a carrier CO, I was a fighter squadron CO. Before that, I spent 17 years flying off of aircraft carriers. Before that, I was a midshipman at the Naval Academy, and before that, I sat here in the class of '66. For me, this was a very, very easy decision. I grew up in Farmingdale, about a half mile from Republic Aviation, where they made fighter airplanes, the F-105, and I spent hours and hours, days and days, watching airplanes land and take off. And I knew that I would be a pilot. I knew that I had to be a pilot. And before long, I knew I would have to fly off of aircraft carriers, and so it was something that I wanted to do and talked about doing even in grammar school. And as I finished grammar school at St. Killian's in Farmingdale, Sister Mary James suggested that I test for Chaminade because Chaminade would be the first best choice I could make in leading to the Naval Academy. I had never heard of Chaminade, but Sister said, so it had to be true. Off I went to Chaminade. I didn't realize that Chaminade would be a life-shaping experience at the time, but I did know that it was important enough to work summers and work weekends to help my parents pay the tuition to come here. I also didn't know it at the time, but Chaminade would instill in me 3 of the most vital things that I think we all need to be successful. I learned them in the classroom, I learned them on the football field, and I learned them in the sodality cell. The first one, professional competence. And I didn't ask Brother Hartz whether or not that's something that still exists here or not, but I heard some sing. That was a very important part of life to us back then. Professional competence. This is the single most important thing that you can think about and strive for. What does it mean? It means to know everything there is about your business. It means to be the best. It means to be the smartest and to continue to learn about your business. I learned this kind of thing in math class here and science class here. I learned from Brother Leahy. I learned from Mr. Young. I learned from Mr. McIntyre. Names that may or may not mean anything to you. The names are different now, but the issue is the same. You have got to be the best in whatever field you choose. You've got to keep learning. The next piece is integrity. Without it, you are nothing. I learned integrity from people like Brother Hartz and Brother Syriac. I learned it right here in Chaminade, from people like that. And I know both those names are recognizable to you. There's a world of information out there, and people will want information from you. Never compromise your ethics. Always be truthful and always be accurate. If you lose integrity, you lose just about everything. And mental and physical stamina. Something I learned in the classroom, something I also learned on the athletic field from coaches named Thomas and McGuckin and Polo and Toop and Lakapo. People who helped shape our young lives those days. The names are different now, but the issue is still the same. You'll learn the value of competing, whether it's on the athletic field or in the classroom or in the debate room. The value of competing. Chaminade taught us that. The value of winning. The ability to be a gentlemanly loser, not a good loser, but a gentlemanly loser. Good losers, before long, don't mind being losers. So be a gentlemanly loser if you must lose, but win. The real secret of the Chaminade education, the real secret of Chaminade is that the brothers, the teachers, they do all of this. They care for every single one of us. It's not the top 5%, the ones who are achieving and going to go on to perhaps do great and interesting things. It's every single one of us in the Chaminade family. I was just slightly below the middle in grade point average. I bounced back and forth between the second and third string on the football team. I never started a game. But all of it was done for all of us. That's the value of Chaminade. That's Chaminade's real secret. You're the last classes of the 20th century, and you're the first classes, college graduates, of the 21st century. You'll lead the world in the 21st century. So I pray that you will study well, because we need you to lead well. Brother Michael, my thanks to you for the opportunity to come back home again. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the student body and the faculty and administration, I'd like to thank Captain Malone for being with us today. By your words, and more importantly, by your example, Captain, you inspire us to do our best to seek excellence in everything that we do, and to know that seeking excellence and achieving excellence, at the same time being a gentleman, a faith-filled Christian, all works together. Thank you very much, Captain. Now introduce Brother James.